Chapter 9. The Familys Feud. The next day, we all went to church. After dinner that night, Miss Sophia asked me to get her Bible from the church because she had forgotten it there. I went to the church and found her Bible. It seemed strange to me that she would be so nervous about it. When I shook the book, a note fell out with 2:30 written on it. When I got home, Miss Sophia took me to her room and looked in the Bible. When she found and read the note, she asked if I had read it. I lied and told her I couldn't read. Then she hugged me and told me to go out and play. Outside, one of the slaves was following me. When I asked him why, he said he has something important to show me. I followed him down to the swamp far from the house. He pointed to an area in the distance, told me to look in there, and then left. I found a little open patch as big as a bedroom hung all around with vines. There was a man laying there asleep. It was old Jim. I woke him up. He was so happy to see me that he nearly cried. He said he had followed me in the water the night we were separated, but he couldn't call out for me because he was afraid someone would have heard him and caught him. "Why didn't you come and get me sooner, Jim?" "Well, I've been busy gathering supplies and fixing the raft." "What raft, Jim?" "Our old raft." "You mean it wasn't smashed to pieces?" "No, she was torn up a good, but I was able to fix her up just fine." "When I saw that you were safe in the old house, I made friends with some of their slaves, and they kept me hidden here." I told Jim to stay put, and then headed back up to the house. I don't want to talk much about the next day. I reckon I'll cut it pretty short. I woke up early and noticed how still it was. There didn't seem to be anybody stirring, which was unusual. Buck was gone and the house was empty. I went outside and asked one of the slaves, who told me that Miss Sophia had run away with one of the Jefferson. They were in love. Both families were off in a battle with each other now. I ran toward the river and soon heard guns. I climbed up a tree and watched the battle. It was horrible. The two families were fighting fiercely and shooting at each other. I found Buck and he told me about Miss Sophia running away with young Harney Jefferson. Buck said they would got across the river safely. I was glad of that, but Buck was angry that he had never shot Harney. I had never heard anything like it. All of a sudden, bang, bang, bang went 3 or 4 guns. Buck and the boys with him jumped for the river. Both of them seemed to be hurt. As they swam down the current, some men ran along the bank shooting at them. It made me so sick that I almost fell out of the tree. I won't tell all that happened next. It would make me sick again if I was to do that. I wished I had never come ashore that night to see such things. I won't ever forget them. I stayed in the tree until it began to get dark. I was afraid to come down. Sometimes I heard guns away off in the woods. Twice I saw little gangs of men gallop past with guns, so I reckoned the trouble was still going on. I was mighty downhearted. I made up my mind I wouldn't ever go near that house again. I thought I was to blame, somehow. I judged I judged that pieces of paper meant that Miss Sophia was to meet Harney somewhere at 2:30 and run off. I should have told her father about that paper and the curious way she acted. Then maybe this awful mess wouldn't have happened. When I got down out of the tree, I crept along down the river bank. I cried a little for Buck, for he had been mighty good to me. It was dark now. I never went near the house, but struck through the woods and made for the swamp. My souls, but I was scared. I raised a yell. A voice nearby said, "Is that you?" It was Jim's voice. Nothing ever sounded so good before. I ran along the bank and got aboard our raft. Jim was so glad to see me that he grabbed me and hugged me. Then he said, "Bless you, child. I was sure you were dead again. The slaves came earlier and they thought you had been shot. I'm so glad to get you back again." "All right, that's mighty good. They won't find me. They will think I've been killed and floated down the river. Don't lose time, Jim. Just shove off for the big water as fast as you can." I was powerfully glad to get away from the fighting, and so was Jim to get away from the swamp. We said there was no home like a raft after all. Other places do seem so cramped up and smothery, but a raft doesn't. You feel mighty free and easy and comfortable on a raft. Chapter 10. A King and a Duke. 2 or 3 days and nights went by, quiet, smooth, and lovely. It was a huge river, sometimes 1.5 miles wide. We traveled at night and hired the raft just before daylight. Then we would have a swim and watch the daylight come. As soon as it was night, we took the raft out to the middle of the river and let her float wherever the current wanted. Then we relaxed, dangled our legs in the water, and talked about all kinds of things. We were always naked, day and night. At least whenever the mosquitoes would let us be. The new clothes Buck's folks gave me were too good to be comfortable. And besides, I didn't like clothes much. Sometimes we had that whole river to ourselves for the longest time. Sometimes you could see a spark or two, candles or lanterns, on a raft or in a cabin near the shore. Once in a while you could hear a fiddle or song coming over from somewhere. It's lovely to live on a raft. The sky was speckled with stars. We would lie on our backs and just look up at them. One morning I paddled upriver a bit to see if I could get some berries. Just as I was passing a place where a path crossed the wreck, a couple of men came running up the path as fast as they could. I thought I was a gunner for sure. Whenever anybody was after anyone else, I always thought it was me or maybe Jim. I was about to paddle away, but they were pretty close by then, and they called out and begged me to save their lives. They said they hadn't been doing anything wrong, but they were being chased. There were men and dogs coming. They got aboard, and in a few minutes we heard the dogs and the men away off, shouting. I paddled in among the trees and hid us from them. One of these fellows was about 70. He had a bald head and very grey whiskers. He was wearing an old beaten-up slouch hat, a greasy blue shirt, and ragged old blue jeans stuffed into his boot tops. The other fellow was about 30 and dressed the same. Both of the men had big, fat, ready-looking carpetbags. After breakfast, we talked. The first thing that came out was that these chaps didn't know one another. "What got you into trouble?" the bald-headed one asked. "Well, I had been selling an article to take the yellow off the teeth. And it does take it off too. It just takes the animal along with it. But I stayed about one night longer than I ought to. I was just about to get away when I ran across you on the trail. You told me they were coming and begged me to help you to get away. So I told you I was expecting trouble myself and would scatter out with you. That's the whole yarn. What's yours?" "Well," said the bald-headed man, "I've been running a little religious meeting there for about a week, talking to the folks about how they should behave. I was taking in as much as $5 or $6 a night, 10 cents a head, when somehow a report got around last night that I had been behaving badly on the sly. This morning I heard that people were gathering. If they got me, they said they would tar and feather me and ride me on a rail." "Old man," said the young one, "I reckon we might double-team it together. What do you think?" "I could do that. What's your line of work, mainly?" "I'm a printer by trade, but I usually sell some medicines or work as a theater actor." "Oh, I can do lots of things. Anything that comes in handy." "I've done some doctoring in my time, too. I can tell a fortune pretty good when I've got somebody along to find out the facts for me. Preaching's my line, too." Nobody said anything for a while. Then the young man sighed and said, "Alice." "What are you Alicing about?" asked the bald-headed man. "To think I should be leading such a life, and to be forced into such company." He began to wipe the corner of his eyes with a rag. "Ain't the company good enough for you?" says the bald-head. "Yes, it is good enough for me. It's as good as I deserve. I don't blame you, gentlemen, far from it. I don't blame anybody. I deserve it all. I brought myself down. Yes, I did it myself." "Brought you down from where?" You would not believe me. The secret of my birth." "The secret of your birth? Do you mean to say, gentlemen," said the young man very seriously, "I will reveal it to you, for I feel I may have confidence in you. By rights I'm a duke. I'm the rightful Duke of Bridgewater." He started to cry about how he was so poor now. We tried to make him feel better, but he said he couldn't be comforted. He said we ought to bow when we spoke to him and say, "Your Grace, my lord," or "Your lordship." He said he wouldn't mind it if we called him Bridgewater, which was his title. He also told us that one of us ought to wait on him at dinner and do any little thing for him that he wanted done. Well, what was easy enough? That was easy enough. We did it, and we could see it made him happier. But the old man got pretty silent and didn't look comfortable. He seemed to have something on his mind. Then, in the afternoon, he said, "Look here, Bilgewater, I feel sorry for you. But you ain't the only person with troubles like that." "Alice." "No, you ain't the only person with a secret." And then he began to cry. "Bilgewater, you see before you, in blue jeans and misery, the wandering, exiled, trampled on, and suffering rightful king of France. It didn't take me long to make up my mind that these liars were not kings nor dukes at all, but just low-down frauds. I never said a thing to let on that I knew the truth. I had no objections if they wanted us to call them kings and dukes, as long as it would keep everything peaceful on the raft. If I learned anything from Pop, it was that the best way to get along with his kind of people is to let them have their own way. They asked us a lot of questions about why we would hide the raft during the daytime and who we were running from, so I made up a story for them. I told them that most of my family was gone and that Jim and I had been living on the raft with my pa and my little brother, but that they had fallen off the raft when we were hit by a steamboat. That night it started to rain. The Duke and the King argued a bit over who would sleep in beds. Mine was a bit better than Jim's, and both were under a little wigwam that Jim had made out of some blankets. While the two liars slept in our beds, Jim and I stayed up and kept watching during the storm.